I've been researching the clothing requirements of plus-size women between the ages of 44 and 60, or Generation X, and how that fits with the drivers to purchasing second-hand clothing. So it was really interesting listening to the other speakers. So just to put this in some context, Generation X women in the UK are the biggest spenders on online clothing. They buy less, but they spend more. Women's bodies change shape as they age, and they're more likely to put on weight, and this is distributed differently, so they have a different body shape. In the UK, 2/3 of Gen X women are a size 18 or above, 46 European size or above. The UK plus size market is worth £7 billion. So this isn't a small market. That's across all women, not just Generation X. And 84% of Generation X consider sustainability when purchasing. So it's quite an important concept for them. As the problems with fast fashion have become more widely known, second-hand platforms have grown in the past few years, as we've heard. But despite this, only 28% of women between the age of 45 and 64 have bought second-hand in the last year, compared to much bigger percentage in younger age groups. There's very little literature on the clothing requirements of Generation X women and the clothing requirements of plus-size women, and very little that I can find in the overlap of these two groups. So I have used the little research I found, but I've also used industry research and articles to look at these two groups separately. So if we look at Generation X women, despite the headlines of 80s supermodels on the catwalk, the exclusive nature of the fashion industry and the young thin ideal still causes women of Generation X to be somewhat invisible in advertising and in the media. However, Generation X women, they're at the peak of their careers and earning potential. Over half of them in the UK are the main household earner. They're busy between parents, growing children, and work, but they resent being stereotyped and asked to wear clothing older than they feel they are. 82% of women in a Wunderman Thompson survey said that they found clothing presented to them, aimed at them, was inappropriate and insulting, and this is borne out by other research too. It's also found to be ill-fitting, and with garment fit and comfort really important as to how long someone keeps a garment before it's disposed, environmentally very important too. Some brands that aim at middle-aged women do grade their clothing differently according to the market, but for example, JD Williams, but when we look at actually who uses their website, that's actually more popular with the older baby boom generation, the over 60s. Other brands traditionally aimed at the middle-aged market, such as Marks and Spencer and John Lewis, also have outdated images of their consumers. Generation X women refuse to conform to the elasticated waists and comfortable shoes they're presented with, and this is shown by the way they're spending their money on younger brands, even though they're ill-fitting, such as River Island, Next, and Topshop. Generation X women, don't buy fast fashion because of the industry's emotional marketing tactics, see Johansson and Persson. They actually are they resort to buying fast fashion because when they go to work, for example, they don't want to walk into an office with younger colleagues dressed like their colleague's grandmother. So if we look at the requirements of Generation X women, obviously they're not a homogenous group. Their self-perceived age is subjective, but there is very little research on the requirements of this group. There was one study by Fan, who showed that Gen X women look for quality and availability. Obviously, these women are busy. They want it to fit well and they want it to be sustainable. They're influenced more by social media influencers and social media than they are traditional media because they aren't reflected well there, whereas they are on social. If we look at plus size clothing, over the last few years, buying plus size clothing has changed dramatically. There are some token gestures on the catwalk now, which gives some hope. And there are more plus size ranges. They tend to be on fast fashion sites and they're aimed at a younger market. Despite one or two shops, when I've looked for shops, looked for retailers, on the high street, there are one or two that go up to a size 22, European 50, but there is really only one specialist plus size shop on the high street in the UK. But plus size women do prefer to buy online anyway because they don't get judged when they're in the shops. In terms of sustainable brands, looking in the UK, I've found a handful of brands that go up to a European 52, UK 24, and only one or two that go bigger than that. This isn't researched, but I do get the impression that there are more in Europe, but that's only my impression. If a woman is middle-aged and plus size, it's almost impossible to find sustainable clothing that fits well and is appropriate. So if we look at the plus size requirements, again, there's very little research on this, but according to a report by PricewaterhouseCoopers, plus size women want, as we've heard from the previous speaker, they want a good price. They want clothes that actually fit them. They don't want clothing that's been scaled up from a size 10 or 12. And they don't want a black sack or bin bag with some sparkles on. They want convenience and they want quality. Because it's more difficult for plus size women to replace their clothes, they tend to keep them longer than non-plus size women do. I have tentatively included sustainability too, although I can't find any UK research that suggests it's important to women. There is research from Europe and the USA. And not specifically to Generation X, sustainable companies like Lucy and Yak and Snag are growing year on year in the UK too. So if we look at the requirements of the two groups overlapping, we can see that we have convenience. Both groups like to purchase online. They're both looking for clothes that actually fit their body shape well. They're looking for quality so that they can keep it, and they're looking for sustainability. The circular fashion model that's been suggested over, as we heard earlier, from the last 10 years, really, which starts with renewable resources, moves on to manufacture with more less polluting and ethical methods and so on. But when we get to the clothes being worn, we find that resale or secondhand clothing is very important in this cycle. But it relies on the clothing being of sufficient quality to withstand several cycles of wear and repair. With the awareness of sustainability problems in fashion, second-hand platforms have grown in the last few years. So if we look at the drivers to purchasing second-hand fashion, we have a comprehensive list for a variety of sources, some of which are a little bit older, but some are more up to date. There is more from sort of 2018, Becca Leafholt and Iran, but a few more recent. There are various hedonic motivators: treasure hunting, fun, nostalgia. Generation X women do like to hunt and research online, but that may be a different thing that needs more research. If we look at some others, there are mixed reports of Generation X women and how they shop in terms of hedonism and utilitarianism. We know they like to shop online and they don't trust easily. And it's difficult to look at hedonic pleasure because that's not something that plus size women tend to associate with shopping for clothes. Price is a clear win for secondhand, enabling consumers to buy better for a lower price. And I'll include that too. Variety is a difficult one. There are several different peer-to-peer platforms available, and many focus on different things, but there is little research on what these platforms actually offer, and there are concerns about the level of fast fashion on these platforms too, and we don't yet know how that will pan out, the effect that will have, if any, on the stream of products being produced. Linked price, consumers can make changes in their wardrobe, try out new things for not much money. Product satisfaction is strong for secondhand shops, but we don't know about peer-to-peer platforms yet. Charlie's work shows that digital platforms can also overcome some of the convenience barriers of buying in secondhand shops. And there's also recent research showing secondhand fashion habits can be legitimised by social media. So I've included these two. So if we move on to the conceptual framework, we can see that some of these match with the requirements of plus size Generation X women. In the middle, there are several drivers to secondhand that fit with price, quality, convenience, sustainability, and social influence. So there is encouragement for further work and possibilities here. And this does lead us nicely onto the limitations and further research. Much of this research is from, on the drivers to secondhand clothing, is from different countries and isn't demographic specific. There is, this framework also assumes that the requirements of the overlap of Generation X women and plus size women separately are the same for the intersectional group. And this in the middle relies on that. So further research is needed. Satisfaction may be related to fit, and this is very difficult to comment on without further research. Plus size women already have a complex relationship with clothing. The marginalisation and the stigmatisation causes them to be very wary. There is little apparent research on how the different platforms suit different consumers. If there isn't enough brand new clothing for plus size Gen X women, is there going to be any more for them secondhand? Unless perhaps maybe plus size women may be encouraged to sell the clothes that they're not wearing because they do keep a fuller wardrobe in a range of sizes traditionally. There's also the encouragement perhaps to wear more quality. These are questions that need more research. So in conclusion, there is very little research into plus size and Gen X women, considering the spending power that they have and the difference that might help with the sustainability problems we have in fast fashion. Because they don't fit with the young, thin ideal of the fashion industry or society, there is very little provision for this group that meets their needs. And when companies do try, they make half-hearted efforts that is frankly insulting to women. This is found in quite a few studies. This research brings together the small amount of literature in different fields that impacts this small but very financially significant group. It shows there is an encouraging basis for more research, and perhaps for those platforms that want to count plus size Gen X women in their target market, this can provide some practical guidance in terms of drivers and requirements. Thank you so much for listening. It's an honour to present here. I welcome any questions and suggestions, and my email address is there.